You made it. You found one bad podcast. Bad.
Who's bad?
I suppose that would be me, Scott Heron. From the deep south. And I mean really deep south. So far south you have to pipe in sunshine. Alright then, let's get to it.
That's right.
Alright, so here's the final part of this whole heart surgery business stuff. And we're getting to the nitty gritty now, right? We found out last time in my former podcast that I had to have heart surgery. They couldn't do a stent because when he got in there, they were too much. In fact, the actual results were there were 3 blockages. And out of those 3, 2 of them were 100%. One of them was 95%. The Widowmaker, you know, the one they say that will kill you dead, is a hammer, and had bypassed itself to another artery that was 95% blocked. He said, we got to get you in here and get this done quick before that last artery, the last 5% goes away, or you're in big trouble. So to get ready for it, I had to do all kind of things. I had to, physically to get ready for it, I had to go get lots of blood drawn, a ton of blood. They just kept pulling blood out. I had to go and have all these ultrasounds done on my arms and on my legs because they had to find a vein that they could use to replace, because what they're actually doing is transplanting a vein from my, my leg or my arm or wherever they get it from, and they're putting it into my heart and using that as a transplant. It's a transplanted vein or artery, not vein, artery. So anyway, they did all of these things. It was just a lot of stuff. They put me on some new medication to get ready for all of this, and they gave me this special soap that I had to bathe in that supposedly kills all the micro. We have microbiological creatures living on us at all times everywhere. And they're trying to get rid of all of that. You have to sit in the soap for a while and let it kill everything that's on you. You have to do that right before you go to bed. And then the next day you have your surgery. Another thing I had to do, I had to find a chair. My wife is small and I'm a big guy. She's not able to pull me out of a chair. And whenever they do this surgery, you're not able to take your hands and do this. You can't do that to get out of a chair. So as a result, I had to get a chair that had a button on it that would actually pretty much stand me up. And I still have the chair. I love the chair. Following surgery, I slept in that chair for a long time. That's the physical things I had to do to get ready. Spiritually, I think I was ready. I really do. I prayed about it to the point I couldn't pray no more. I cried about it. Can I say that I didn't have any anxiety? No. I think anxiety is normal. I'm perfectly happy dying right now today. If God wants to take me home, I'm ready to go. But that doesn't mean that I'm ready to speed up the process. You know what I'm saying? I was ready to go if I didn't make it through the surgery. I learned what my odds were, and everyone's different with their odds. It's based on your age. It's based on what they're doing, how bad it is. And my odds were enough. Emotionally and mentally, I started seeing things differently. I think I still do. I would go to sleep at night and I would put my hand on my wife's back or her shoulder, maybe even on the back of her head. I wanted to touch her. I would look at pictures of my grandchildren, or when they would come to see me, which they did before I had surgery. I didn't look at them the same way. I wanted to soak up everything, soak it all up. Surgery day gets here. I've had to get up early that morning and bathe in that stuff again, So I'm bathing in that stuff again. I stink. It smells up to high heaven. So I stunk, and I got in the car, got on some comfy clothes, went to the hospital. I went back and I laid down on the little bed that they had back there for me. But on this arm, I think it was on my arm, if I remember correctly, in order to get a vein to do the anesthesia, general anesthesia, it was so bad they had to get a ultrasound, like they look for babies inside of mamas. They had to get an ultrasound and move until they found the vein. They were taking blood out of this arm, and in this arm he was trying to stick, and it was about that deep in my arm, because they were trying to find that vein that was way down in there, which ends up staying there. He administered the anesthesia, and he told me, he says, "You won't feel much for very long." Bam, I'm awake. When I woke up, I was in ICU. I mean, it was just like that. You won't feel very much for very long. Boom, my eyes are open and I'm in ICU. And folks, I had a breathing machine in my mouth. I could not move my head. I was on a ventilator breathing for me. And I couldn't move my head. I couldn't make a sound. I tried. I wanted that thing out. And so I'm tapping on the side of the bed, and I can hear Tammy talking to nurses and stuff like that. And I'm tapping on the side of the bed. Then I hear the man tell me, he says, "I need you to cough real hard." And when I coughed, he pulled the thing out. And I took my first breath on my own. And I remember I was sore. I was real groggy. I could feel that I had something done, but the pain wasn't terrible. And I'll say to this day, the pain in my chest has never been really that awful. It's been tolerable. And I don't like pain medicine, so I didn't take a lot of pain medicine. I really didn't. They were coming in there trying to get me to take more pain medicine in the hospital, and I'm turning it away, saying, "No, I'm okay." I would take Tylenol. I just remember praying, "God, let me be nice to these nurses. Let me be nice to them." So I tried to be kind to them, tried to thank them every time they came in there, because I had dedicated nurses that worked with no one but me, during that time. Maybe that day or maybe even that same night, they moved me to a real room, to a real hospital room. At that point, I had a team of nurses around me that were fantastic. They made me get up and sit in a chair. They made me get up and try to walk. And y'all, at first, trying to walk every step, moving one leg, moving another leg. It was just all I could do to move this one leg forward again. But in all of it, I wanted to be kind to my nurses. One of my nurses was one of my daughter's really close friends in high school and spent the night at our house a whole lot, which was awesome, except for whenever I was, there's no modesty. There's no modesty. And so I tried to stay covered up as much as I could, but they're coming in every 30 minutes, they're sticking my finger. Every 30 minutes, checking my blood sugar. They are giving me shots. They're giving me medication. They're giving me stuff all the time, every day, all the time. And folks, when I tell you folks, I was thirsty. I was Dracula in a coffin buried in the ground for 1,000 years thirsty. I was so thirsty. I would have given anything for Lazarus to dip his finger in the water and touch the tip of my tongue. I'm just telling you, they had deliberately cut me down on my fluid intake so that the fluid running through your veins and arteries in your heart is not, that much. That way the heart's not overworking. The heart's working softly. And I was so thirsty. That was something that I do really explicitly remember. They would make me breathe in this thing where I had to hold air in like, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but it's very, very difficult. There's this float, and you had to raise the float, and you had to hold it and raise that float there and going in a slow, hard drag, trying to pull air to keep your lungs clear and open. And they would give me breathing treatments. I had a catheter. Oh, one thing that I do remember is before they let me out of ICU into the regular room, they had to remove chest tubes. There was this tube that was going into my chest right here. Now, I had a drip that went in here that went down into my chest, and I had a drip that went in here that went into my chest. I had a drip in this arm, a drip in this arm, and then I had this chest tube. And the chest tube, when I tell y'all, that was probably the only thing that really I experienced some pain. Whenever they removed the chest tube, they pulled it, and I want you to know it just kept coming out. Apparently, that chest tube is wrapped up around under your heart, and they're just pulling, and it feels like they're pulling out your intestines. I mean, it was just a terrible, awful thing. I can't describe the feeling. It was awful, but it goes by really quick. It took them all total of about 15 seconds to do it, and at the same time they're doing that, they're like, okay, well, squeeze our hand, but I'm still kind of under anesthesia, in and out in ICU. So I remember it. I remember that it hurt, but it was over with so fast. And I remember when they were done, I was ready to lay back and kind of go, kind of breathe it off. Surgery was a complete success. They took the vein, the artery, I keep saying vein. They took the artery out of my leg. I had 4 cuts about this long each. 2 on my thigh, starting at about the groin, 1 right above my knee, and then 2 on my calf, about the same size. And my understanding is just where they opened, clipped one end of the artery, and then opened again and clipped the other end and pulled it out, and that's where they used to do that. It's that food, everything I tasted was just gross. Because during surgery, they completely stop your heart, they completely stop your lungs, and they divert all that to this breathing machine that breathes for you and beats and circulates your blood for you, so that all of this is stopped. And then they cut you from here, which is where my scar starts, which is right here. And then that cut goes to right about here. I had 2 little small cuts under that, and that's where they had these electrodes that go in case they have to jolt your heart. They cut that sternum, that breastbone. They put a clamp in there, and they click it open to where your ribs open, or where they can get under them. And then they're working on the heart. Something to do with the anesthesia, them putting you to sleep, something to do with being off of the heart, not working and being on this machine instead, makes it to where food is just awful. Listen, it didn't matter what I put in my mouth. It tasted like some kind of gross pasty taste. If you've had this before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's horrible. Nothing tastes like it's supposed to. I didn't think until about the 3rd day after surgery, I've not been to the bathroom, so I had some complications from that. If you aren't going to the bathroom after about the 3rd day or so, you need to be asking for Miralax or something like that, because you need to be going. I had complications from that were severe, and I'm just now, after about 10 months, healed from all of that. That was way more painful than this. And then I do better. I feel better. I'm improving, and I go home. After about a week, I go home. And I had this person that came. It was a nurse that was a home health nurse, and she came in, and she would come 2 or 3 days a week and just make sure everything's good. My blood pressure's good. I'm trying to walk. I've gotten to where I'm walking up to 2.5, 3 miles, and I'm doing okay. It was not easy because 1, my leg had cuts all over it. 2, it's just very difficult to move and to get everything going again. It was very hard. And so I'm trying to do all of that. And I'm losing weight, because you have a lot of fluid buildup, and I'm losing a lot of that. Trying to get over the digestive issue, which was bad, severe. It was bad. And then about the 2nd week, I guess going into the 3rd week, something's not right. Something's really feeling bad. And I get to start running high fever. And my home health nurse says, you got to get to the hospital now. So I go back to the hospital. And I learn when I go back to the hospital that I have got a bacteria that I picked up at the hospital called Pseudomonas. And Pseudomonas is very, very serious. I went septic, y'all. I was back in the hospital for another week. That 2nd week, I was on high-powered antibiotics. We don't know where the Pseudomonas came from, if I touched something in the room, or if it was something to do with the instruments they used on me. But somewhere in the hospital, I picked up Pseudomonas. And they said if I'd have waited another 12 hours, I may not have made it. It was that bad whenever I went septic. I was fine 1 minute, and the next minute I was bad. So if you start having any fever, having anything, you're just not feeling like you're improving, go get checked out and make sure that you're okay on that. And then once I got over that, I started improving, and I was much better. I started walking again because I'd gotten to where I couldn't walk as much as I needed to. I remember whenever I was laying on that table that, I wasn't afraid to die. I remember that. I was kind of at a place, I had some family that came and were there, and lovely people that I'm super close to that from Tennessee came, and they were there. But anyway, I learned what it meant to stare death right down the barrel, you know, and I was ready for that. I was prepared for that. And I was ready to go with it. So I'm good. I'm trying to, you know, I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to go into the surgery with a positive attitude. But if I didn't come out of it, I was what we talked about last week. Even if God doesn't pull me through this, I will always trust him. And I'm going to believe that he's going to take care of me regardless. Because what's the worst that can happen to us as believers, right? Heaven. If I die, that's the worst that can happen to me. Really? Worst? Whatever. It's heaven, right? And so for this video, I want to just very briefly say to you, if you don't wake up tomorrow and instead you find yourself in the afterlife, where will you find yourself? Will you find yourself in heaven with Jesus? The Bible says that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Will you find yourself in his presence? He told the thief on the cross, Jesus said to the thief, today you will be with me in paradise. Will you be in paradise? Or will you be the one wishing for eternity that you knew Jesus, that he knew you? Jesus died on the cross so that we could live forever. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever would believe in him would not perish. Would not perish. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't have died on that table. I could have easily. I could die right now in this chair. But have everlasting life. That means would not eternally perish. In eternal separation from God. But that I have everlasting life in heaven with him. It was important enough for me to be a part of heaven that he died for it. That's saying a lot because I know me. I know the stuff that I've done. I know the things that I'm ashamed of. And he died for me anyway. He loved me so much that he would rather die on a cross than live without me. So, find Jesus. That was my experience with heart surgery. That's what I went through. That's what it was like. Am I over it completely yet? Not quite. I'm about 95%. It's been 10 months. About 95% there. But God has taught me a whole lot. He's taught me so much. And he's given me heaven.